Hi, I'm Jeff Sikkenga, Executive Director of the Ashbrook Center, and this is The American Idea, where we discuss the ideas, people, and events that have made America what it is today. We believe that by understanding our history and our principles, we can better live up to the promise of the American founding and preserve our ongoing experiment in self-government. Welcome to The American Idea.
I want to welcome everyone to this episode of The American Idea. Today we're joined by Congressman Jim Jordan. Congressman Jordan, thanks for taking the time.
Our pleasure. Good to be with you.
You've been speaking here at the Ashbrook Center on the leadership America needs.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners who are across the country, you've had opportunity to exercise leadership in the legislative branch, obviously, as chairman of a House committee. Also, of course, in your days as a collegiate wrestler. Tell us some important things that you've learned in your time about leadership.
I said this to the larger group that I think leaders are willing to assume risk and to take on risk. There's a great movie made a long time ago, probably, man, that's how old I am, 40 years ago, maybe more, 45 years ago. But the movie is Chariots of Fire. Oh, yeah. Great show. Harold Abrahams and Eric Liddell, both great sprinters and sport of track and field, and you follow them as they train and prepare to compete in the 1924 Paris Olympic Games, 100 years ago. And the Olympics are back in Paris this year. Right. Yeah, exactly. So, but you follow these guys. Well, they both wind up being gold medalists. One in the 100, one in the open 400. The sporting world had to know who's the fastest, who would win in a race between Abrahams and Liddell. And Abraham's England, Liddell from Scotland. So they put the competition together. It's the big event that particular day. It's time for the 100-meter dash. They line them up. They fire the gun. They have the race. It's Liddell first, Abraham second. The next scene is up in the stands. Abrahams, who's lost his first race, is sitting up in the empty stands, looking down at the track, and he's replaying the race in his mind over and over again. And each time it's the same result. Liddell wins, he's second. Liddell wins, he's second. And he's doing this, and the young lady beside him, who he would later marry, rhetorical question, she says, Harold, why the long face? So you lost. You won all the others. You finished second. Why the sour look? There's a little pause, and he turns to her and he says, I don't run to lose. I run to win. And if I can't win, I will run. He's thinking about quitting because the pain of losing was just got him. There was another little pause, and then she turned back to him and had the best line in the movie. She says, Harold, if you don't run, you can't win. And that says it all. And so leaders, and of course he went on to be an Olympic champion and said about training and doing all the things you had to do to be the best. So I think leaders understand that you have to risk failure, and you're going to fail because we're human beings. None of us are perfect. But to me, that is a huge quality, assuming the risk associated with trying to do something worthwhile.
You spoke also a little bit about the importance of leaders telling the truth, even uncomfortable truths. Yep. And you referenced actually Winston Churchill. Said you're reading a great book on Churchill, and he's one of your favorite leaders.
Yeah. No, he is. And he was willing to stand up and say it. He was willing to change parties twice and go to the back, where he was more in a leader in the party, goes the other side, and you got to work your way back up. He was willing to do it for things he believed to be true, for essential truths and for important positions. And in the long run, he was such a needed guy at the most important time when, he saw the evil of Nazi Germany coming before anyone else did. Spoke out against it. No one was really listening, but he kept doing it. And then when that critical moment came, they turned to him and said, you got to lead us. And he did for 5 years as the prime minister during the Blitzkrieg and all the stuff they had to endure in London and England. So yeah, it was, sometimes it's tough, and you got to speak out. And we've seen time and time again people do it. And in the end, it pays off. But in the short run, it's kind of tough.
You've had a little bit of a reputation of being willing to speak out on issues, even if it makes people in your own party uncomfortable.
Well, I try not to do that, but there's sometimes you have to. Sometimes I guess you just. I've said this many times, and I think I said it at the lunch meeting that I think we make the job too complicated. it's pretty basic job when you're a member of Congress or in any elected position. What'd you tell the voters you were going to do? Go do that. So I try to do that, and sometimes if I feel like my party's contrary to what I told the voters I was for, you got to speak up. So I've done that some, and balancing that, of course, with also trying to accomplish what you told the voters you're going to do and work with your colleagues is sort of the challenge of it all. And so yeah, we try to do that.
Well, certainly one of the most issues on which you've been most outspoken, including being critical of the Republican Party, is fiscal discipline, financial stewardship, fiscal leadership.
Yeah. No, we're this debt problem. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, and you're so right. $34 trillion? It's just a humongous debt problem. We need to get back to a stronger, growing economy, and then begin to bend that curve down. And it's unfortunate that, seems to me all Democrats want to spend more money, and a significant number, unfortunately, of Republicans want to spend some more money. And there's very few fighting for tamping down on the size and growth of government. But if we don't do it pretty soon and get the spending curve from here flattened a little bit, doesn't have to go dead flat, doesn't have to go negative. It just has to come down some while we grow, so we can send a message to the market, being the largest economy in the reserve currency. We can deal with it. But if we don't get that done pretty soon, then I'm afraid it could get really bad.
Have you felt sometimes like kind of a voice in the wilderness crying out on that issue?
Oh, I don't know. There's been some issues where there's only been a few of us speak out. A few years ago, there was only a few of us speaking out against what we thought was what the Justice Department was up to and some of the things they were doing that just didn't make sense, particularly about this whole spying on a presidential campaign. There's been a few times. But everyone has that. There've been times I'm sure you've had to, running this fine institution that you run. There's times where you got to speak out, but in the end, it works out.
Thinking about challenges in the future for American leadership, what do you think is the most pressing issue facing America today?
Well, the debt's huge. In a foreign policy context, China and Russia are huge, particularly China. Russia's serious as well. But I still think that the border's a big issue. The inflation, which is, I think going to exacerbate this debt issue and everything else because the interest payments we have. But I still think the fundamental concern that I have is the attack on the First Amendment.
Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you can't have a free culture, free country if the government is involved in censoring what Americans see, what they post, what they read, what they hear. And we know that's been going on because we've uncovered it with Twitter files, but then the work, thank God bless Elon Musk, what he's let the country see there. But then our work on our committee, doing our oversight, the Facebook files, the Amazon files, the YouTube files, all of them were involved in limiting certain speech. And it was predominantly, we have this case, Missouri v. Biden, which is now in front of the Supreme Court, where the lower courts have said it was disproportionate attack on conservative speech. There were some attacks on speech from the left, but the vast, vast majority was attack on conservative speech. And the lower court decision was so strong. It went through agency by agency in the federal government. So I'm really concerned about that because, like I said before, if you can't speak, you can't exercise your other rights under the First Amendment. You can't really practice your faith. You can't share your faith. You can't petition your government. You don't have a free press if you're not allowed to speak and exercise your First Amendment free speech rights. And that's where the Turley's called it the censorship industrial complex. Actually, Taibbi and Schellenberger, the authors of the Twitter files, called it that. Turley called it censorship by surrogate. So the government pressuring big tech to censor, pressuring big media, pressuring big academia to censor. It's censorship by surrogate, which is just as wrong and just as much a violation of the First Amendment.
It's interesting that some of the folks that you mentioned and that you've had in front of your committee would call themselves liberals.
Oh, yeah. Tulsi Gabbard, Michael Schellenberger, Matt Taibbi, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I'm forgetting we had another Democrat. I probably invited more Democrats than the Democrats have invited in to speak, because there are RFK Jr. came in, Dennis Kucinich, a friend of mine, came in, was working with RFK's campaign. So yeah, we've brought in a bunch, but they're Democrats, many of them now largely independents, because the Democrat Party, they feel, has left them, but they're Democrats who believe in the First Amendment.
Is it strange that Jim Jordan is working together with people who describe themselves as liberals?
Yeah, I laugh at that, but I so appreciate these guys, because it's tough for them too, going against their party. Like, I can talk about the Democrats' attack on the First Amendment, and they're going to attack me like they always do. But you're in their party and do it, they're all getting attacked by the Democrats as well. They tried to kick RFK Jr. out of the hearing. Democrats made a motion, like, the executive session, no one can hear what he has to say. Like, what are you talking about? So, yeah, it's sort of scary.
Of course, the American idea, we're always interested in people's perspective today, but also historically. Asked you this before, love to hear your answer again. Your favorite leader in American history, or maybe more broadly?
Well, in a broader sense, it'd be Churchill, because I just find him fascinating. I find I love our system. I think our system is the best, but I'm fascinated by how a parliamentary system works. And it's I've talked with members of the Israeli Knesset parliamentary system and the coalition, and it's sort of interesting because the old joke is in America, if you get 2% of the vote, you're considered a nut job, right? But in Israel, or a parliamentary system, particularly Israel, if you get 2% of the vote, you're a power broker, right? you can determine who's going to be in power, and so I'm fascinated by that. But Churchill was an amazing individual. He actually in the First War, he's out of the central government. I mean, the government, the ministries, still a member of Parliament, but because he's not doesn't have one of the ministry portfolios, he actually went across the channel and goes and gets in the trenches and fights with his men. Member of Parliament, think about that. And this is, then goes back to England and will give a speech, and it's that is amazing. So I find him fascinating. I love all the founders of our great country. That period, those guys. One of my favorite movies is that musical 1776, which the great line in there was when they're debating the Declaration, and because it's got some comedy in the musical too, but they're debating the Declaration, and that Jefferson's written, they're marking it up like Congresses do, and there's someone says, well, they get this way, we need to take this out because if King George sees this, it's a little too offensive, so we need to strike this language. And John Adams is kind of rolling his eyes. And then pretty soon another member of Congress stands up and says, well, we need to get rid of this because when the English Parliament sees this, we need to tone that down. And Adams and finally someone stands up and says, well, we got to get rid of this section because it could jeopardize our deep sea fishing rights off the coast of New England. And Adams stands up and goes, it's a revolution, dang it. We're going to have to offend somebody. And it's one of those great lines, And so those guys, what they did to start this thing is truly amazing. So I like reading about those guys too.
Your advice for our listeners, particularly young people who might be out there, whether they're liberal, moderate, conservative, who are interested in getting into public life.
Just get involved with the campaign, help a good candidate that you like. And as I said to the group earlier, don't be afraid to run for office. If there's always going to be people tell you can't do it, but if you think you can win and you're willing to work hard, I mean, that's what they all told me I couldn't win when I first ran.
Were you the odds-on favorite when you first ran?
No, I was like some Joe Bag of Donuts. There was a 2-term county commissioner, but and they told me oh no, you're a nice young guy, but you can't win. And I said, we'll see. We wound up winning because we had it's not me, but we had just a bunch of good people help us out. We just worked hard and knocked on a bunch of doors and wound up winning big. So, and I've been at it ever since. I reckon that's 30 years ago. It's amazing how old I'm getting. So yeah, 1994 state rep, took office in 95. What am I doing? But it's been interesting. So it's been in many ways a lot of fun too.
You were a 2-time NCAA collegiate wrestling champion. I bet a lot of our listeners wonder, Jim Jordan still work out? He still wrestle?
No, I'm not dumb enough to wrestle, but I am smart enough to work out because I really like to work out. So I worked out this morning. Had a great workout. I love the Airdyne, so I did a long one today, 40 43, 44 minutes on the Airdyne today. So, and I get my heart rate up and get like I'm like one of those typical wrestlers, get sweat everywhere. But I wanted to play middle linebacker, but when you're my size, you gotta wrestle. So I was the good Lord had other designs, so I went to wrestling, and it's been great for our family. My brother is an amazing success in the sport of wrestling on the business side, on his wrestling camp. His boys, our boys, my brother-in-laws, their boys, we all grew up wrestling. They all grew up wrestling, in our school, and it's a big thing. So we love wrestling.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to be with us on The American Idea.
Thank you. Thanks for all the good work you do.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The American Idea. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe at Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star review. If you want to learn more or get involved in Ashbrook's vital work, visit our website, ashbrook.org.